And on a record-breaking show, there's no one better to bring in the middle of a record-breaking audience than our record-breaking sideline reporter, UCSS favorite, bearer of all cold weather, Aditi Kinkhabwala. What's up, Aditi?
Aditi, I have a hard-hitting question for you.
What an intro
okay.
for a record-breaking show, Aditi.
Oh, boy.
You caught a cold,
And I'm
didn't you?
coughing. I'm coughing on a record-breaking show. You
But
couldn't
you were
told
on the
me
radio. Aditi, you were on the radio this weekend, so you didn't have to, like, dress up. You could have worn all kinds of winter coats and all kinds, and you still got sick, huh?
I did, yeah. I mean,
I have a hard-hitting question for you.
Standing outside from 9 a.m. It was the longest game on the planet. 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. in 25 degrees. And it's not the cold. It's obviously germs that give you a cough, not the cold. But I'm sure it weakens your immune system or does something to you. And then I had a long, long drive home. Drive home. Do you know how long it takes to get out of that parking lot?
I have a question for you.
do.
This is along the lines of investigative journalism. Maybe you can help me out here. I saw a lot of video clips over the weekend of Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins coach, perhaps sneaking a hit of a vape pen. Is he vaping on the sidelines? America needs to know.
Honestly, I have no idea. I did see one of those videos, and I was like, is he just like breathing into his hands, or is it something else? I don't know why he would hide it, though.
Mikey, do you? I would
guys,
imagine he's hiding it because
we'll have it in 1 sec.
I bet you the league has a rule against smoking on the sidelines, and that.
But you
even though it's
can
vaping,
chew on the sideline.
Well,
you can chew. I mean, Josh Boyer is defensive coordinator.
Right.
Has a
That's
huge
what I'm saying.
yeah, but that's different. I think.
does.
I think the difference between you remember when smoking was allowed, but you might remember this, but in Pittsburgh, here it is. Now watch. Here's where I think it's vape because watch his lips here. Oh, he's.
I mean, Mike McDaniel.
He wouldn't be blowing into his hands with gloves on.
Mike McDaniel does look like a 20-year-old kid who's, getting stoned in his mom's basement. I mean, that's basically what he looks like.
By the way,
He's hitting the pen.
He was on the plane with Josh Gordon when he was with the Browns, and Gordon got suspended for everything on the plane that was going on when they were going to Vegas.
Really?
Mike McDaniel was on that flight. Just throwing that out there.
Connecting some dots here on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
I'm not going to be a part of any of this
No,
rumor
I know
mongering
you're
or
not.
speculation. I still like to
I
keep
knew
my
Aditi
integrity
had
and
some.
credibility intact.
You got some street in you. We don't talk. We don't know. We didn't see nothing. I'm not talking to the police. That's allegedly, Aditi is from the streets. No,
Let's get your thoughts on Jim Schwartz, Aditi. This morning, the Browns hired Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator. I don't know how well you know him. He's been around the league forever. What do you think of the hire? What are you hearing?
He demands a ton out of his defensive line. I think immediately
Love
that
to hear
improves
that.
it.
Love it.
Look, he's not a warm fuzzy. I'm a big personal fan of Joe Woods. I like him a lot as a human. He's always smiling. And I'll even tell you this, even when I texted him when he was let go, he's got a positive, sunny attitude. And you appreciate that in a person. But it's not just me that said this. John Johnson said this when the season ended. This Browns defense may need a completely different personality, and that's who Jim Schwartz is. And maybe that's what you need. I think DeQuell said it to all of you last week, that you need somebody who's going to light a fire up your you-know-what. And this isn't a guy that's just going to smile and make you feel warm fuzzy. And we do know that he gets the most out of every defensive line that he has, which was obviously a major issue, if we could call it that, this year.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So tell us what we can expect to see out of the Browns defense next year.
I mean, don't you think that anything better would be? I mean, I do. I think that there will be more of an investment, too, in the defensive front, quite frankly. I think that there was a lot of hope that some of these young guys would sort of like patch it together and their fire and their energy and their verve would give them the physicality that they needed. I don't know that that really played out the way you'd want. So you'd love to go see Andrew Berry do something, maybe shore up that area somewhat better. But I think you're definitely going to see a stouter, tougher front. I think that you're going to see a much better run defense. I think you'll see a better disciplined defense in general.
So I made the point last week, this could be appealing to a DC because kind of what you just said, you have to overhaul the front seven of this defense. So if Jim is going to be sort of the head coach of the defense, how much input do you think he'll have? How do you build a defense when you have so many changes are coming? And how big of a voice will he have in who they bring in?
Wait, do you really think it's an overhaul? Like, are you
Of the
not?
front
Because a lot
seven.
of guys were hurt. Well, when you look at the linebackers, there were a lot of injuries in the linebacking core. Do you feel like that's a group that you really want?
Well, Anthony Walker's a free agent. I mean, JOK's back. Anthony Walker's a free agent, though. I think JOK is the only linebacker that you can circle and say for certain he's going to be back. Right? Am I missing anyone? Certainly you need 2 D tackles. You need a defensive end. You probably need a linebacker. That, to me, is an overhaul of the front 7.
Yeah. Well, I would expect that there is enough respect for Jim Schwartz, how long he's done it, how long he's been around, how much success he's had, that of course he's going to have input. You know, at the end of the day, we say that coaches have to coach the players that they've given. You get the most out of who you have. But in an opportunity like this, when you can actually sort of make up who your mix is, why would they not take that input? And I will say this about Andrew Berry. He's not a guy that doesn't want to be collaborative, doesn't want to hear good thoughts.
You know, Didi, Jason said that when he said that, and he talked about it being, you know, this year they're not going to be able to get all those positions at once. It's going to have to probably be something that they you know, do in a couple years or 3 years. With that being said, given where we are with Kevin Stefanski, I'm sitting here thinking, is that a foregone conclusion that if they don't make the playoffs next year, that this regime won't be gone? Do you think that this hire means that there's a little more possible leeway in terms of win-losses and making the playoffs before they're on the hot seat?
Leeway meaning that you think this buys him more time?
Yeah.
No, I think in some ways it almost ups the pressure. Okay, we're getting a seasoned veteran defensive coordinator, a guy who's had demonstrated success in the league. The excuses, gee, aren't you the one that said this the other day, that the time for excuses is done?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, how long can we sit here and keep saying, okay, well, look, this was a mitigating circumstance, or this was an unusual circumstance, or this or that? Like, at some point, you do have to, you know, there are certain organizations that believe in loyalty, which can be their best trait and their worst trait at the same time. I don't know that that's the Browns. And we did see sort of a quick trigger early on. Then one could argue that they stuck with a coach for far too long, especially after 1-31.
They extended him.
I don't think that after spending this much money on this quarterback, on constructing a roster that looks like this with this much talent, that it's just, okay, you know, this staff gets another 5 years to try to make. I mean, this is a team that's constructed to win right now.
So this year is the year. I
agree. I do think we overrated the talent. I'm just going to speak for myself. I think I overrated the Browns' talent a little bit because, indeed, they are a studs and duds team. That's the problem. A lot of these other teams, like they're second and they don't have a lot of good second and third tier players.
But see, you know what? I have a whole new attitude about this, Adam, and it's funny because I'm literally in the middle of a conversation right now with a veteran coach in the league about how people really underestimate the value of good coaching. And look at Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was a bust until Brian Daboll got a hold of him. Look at Tua Tagovailoa. He was a bust until all of a sudden Mike McDaniel and Darrell Bevel get a hold of him, and he's an MVP candidate. Trevor Lawrence, nobody knew what he was, and they thought he was a mess. And then all of a sudden, Doug Peterson has Trevor Lawrence in the last month of the season.
I don't think that's fair. I think Trevor Lawrence would have been good no matter what, I think.
Well, I mean, he wasn't great last year.
No, he was considered a bust last year, though.
The best coaches are going to get the most out of the players that they have. And I think that sometimes we think that these guys are finished products. You know, like, think about our own jobs and how we get better when we have mentorship, when we have leaders. When I had an editor who took an interest in everything I was writing, my stories got better. My questions got better. The way that I put things together, all of that gets better. We can't just expect some kid to come out of college and just be a finished product. Part of being in the NFL and sustaining a career is your development. So are you truly developing? And we sit here and we see a lot of natural raw talent. I understand what you're saying, that maybe we overestimated some of that talent.
Yes.
But I would also say maybe the Browns didn't get as much out of all of that talent as they could.
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I agree. I think they can get more out of it. I'm not saying they're not talented. I thought they were top 5 talent roster. I don't think they're quite that high. I think they're top half of the league talent. And I think they should get more out of the coaching staff, especially on the defensive side. But there are some clear holes on this team talent-wise.
I mean, that's fair. I think there was we went into the season saying that we're concerned about the interior of the defensive line, and we ended the season saying, well, the interior of the defensive line was it, so that's very valid. But I think, did we have higher expectations for maybe Grant Delpit? Is that I hate to call out one individual name. That doesn't seem really fair. But, I hate that I just did that. Somebody say somebody else, too. Did we have higher expectations?
Denzel Ward had a disappointing season.
And do injuries go into that? But to me, one of your main abilities is being available. So all of that is part of it. I think that there are guys that we looked at that maybe we did expect more of. It's a confluence of different circumstances. I don't know, but I do think that the foundation, the core of this roster is one that fans absolutely should have hope. It's not like the cupboard is bare here.
No,
but you should
not.
want to get more out of them.
Yeah. No
Aditi, I mean, we talk about the coaching staff, and I think in particular Stefanski, but I also think that that this entire regime, including the Podesta and Andrew Berry, because when you talk about talent acquisition and evaluating talent, I think Jason brought it up a while ago. They haven't had an All-Pro. Andrew Berry hasn't drafted an All-Pro yet. And, that at some point becomes a concern when your best players are carryovers from the previous regime.
Not even an All-Pro, just a Pro Bowler.
Just a Pro Bowler. Yeah, I'm sorry, just a Pro Bowler.
But again, this is one of those where I really think that coaching is underestimated in this league. And I think that again, I really like Joe Woods as a man, but I think that sometimes you do need change. And you need to get more out of your players. There's definitely no question of that. And we see it all around the league. I'm unwilling to write any of these guys off just yet. I'm unwilling to say that they're not otherworldly talents simply because I've just seen so many players take some time. And again, be the beneficiaries of good coaching. I hate that I'm saying this, though, because, Jason, do I sound defensive?
No. I think
you're looking at it from all angles. That's smart.
So defensive of Kevin Stefanski, and it's not really that.
Aditi, I got called an apologist last week for it. Whatever. Because I don't think you should give up the play calling. That makes me an apologist. Come on.
See, and I think he should give up the play calling.
Whoa.
But
I guess I'm the real apologist.
You got to get more into that.
Yeah.
You can't drop that nugget and not tell us
why.
Yeah, we need to drill down on that.
Oh my God, I've been saying this for a long time.
Have.
I just love
I like
the model of a CEO head coach.
So do
and
I.
I just think that the Browns right now, for where they are, this isn't an outfit that is 100% mature, professional, shows up every day with the same exact will. It's just, it's a different, it's one of those things that you can't necessarily put your finger on, but they're not a veteran group that has had sustained success that doesn't really need the same amount of care and feeding. And so I would prefer a coach who oversees all of it, a coach who, when he needs to hop into this meeting room, does, and that meeting room does, and this other one over there does, and who kind of coaches his coaches to coach the players. And, it kind of goes back to, I was telling you, we had a production meeting with Deshaun Watson for his first game against the Texans, and then we had him again Christmas Eve against the Raiders. And I had asked him, and I know I told you all of this a couple weeks ago, I'd asked him, okay, now that you've actually had these few weeks working directly with Kevin Stefanski, doing the game planning where you're the one executing it, is there anything that's surprising or unexpected? And he said he was surprised by how much time Kevin Stefanski actually spends in the quarterback room. And I had gone back to Kevin Stefanski, and I know I shared this with you, and he had said that he likes being around players, that when he first became a coordinator, it felt a little lonely on the sideline during individual drills. Like, where do I go stand? Because he likes being around players. I appreciate that. But I also think that when your club needs to kind of get over the hump, maybe there's a piece of this that's just focusing all of your efforts on coaching the whole entire outfit. And I know that he gets that. I know that that's part of why he got a second office downstairs next to the locker room so he can interact with all the players. But I'll give you one example. Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni comes into Philadelphia. He wants to call the plays. He started last season calling the plays. And then, a few weeks in, whenever it was the bye, I'm not sure exactly what week, he said, all right, you know what? This club needs me and needs all of me, not just the offense. And he gave up the play calling duties to Shane Steichen. And now here you are in year 2 of Shane Steichen calling the plays. Jalen Hurts, for the first time since he was in high school, has the same play caller 2 consecutive years. And he's had, until he got hurt, he was having an MVP-like season. I think that part of being a great leader is trusting the ability to delegate. And it's the ability to say, okay, I trust you to do this. And look, this is not just Kevin Stefanski has said he loves calling plays. He really loves calling plays. He loves doing it. It's one of his favorite parts of the job. I can understand how difficult that can be to give it up. But sometimes you have to make a sacrifice for the greater good. And so I don't know. I just think that you have to trust your staff. And look, I've said the same exact thing about Mike Tomlin for the last 5 or 6 years. I don't understand why he didn't trust Keith Butler to call the plays, why he won't trust Terrell Austin to call the plays. Why does Mike Tomlin have to do that? I don't know.
Here's the only counter I guess I would make is I agree probably he doesn't need to spend as much time in the quarterback room, but I think you could still call the plays and not be in the quarterback room all day, every day. And it's what's working right now for the Browns. Deshaun was not great over the last 6 weeks. I think there are a lot of extenuating circumstances beyond that. But Kevin has proven that when he's calling the plays, this offense rolls. So why mess with something that's working? And you can still have your hand in other areas during the week.
Okay, but
you don't have to be in the quarterback room all the time.
Sure, but here's the big deal. That's almost saying that it couldn't work with anybody else. I don't understand why it couldn't work with AVP. I mean, Alex Van Pelt helps build the game plan with Kevin Stefanski all week. He helps install it. It's not as if he couldn't do it, A. And B, how well is it really working if the team isn't making the playoffs?
Yes, because you're neglecting half of the team.
What is the standard here? Is the standard, okay, well, the offense is scoring points, or is the standard you're making the playoffs?
Well,
what needs to be done to improve the entire team?
Yeah. Fair.
The reason they didn't make the playoffs is why Joe Woods was fired and why Jim Schwartz was hired. And he got more out of Jacoby Brissett than I thought was ever possible. The offense isn't the reason that they didn't make the playoffs.
No, but because the defense so wildly underperformed, that is why. And that's also why Joe Woods
and he's the head coach and it falls. Yeah, and he's the head coach and it falls on him.
What Aditi's point is, and I think, Aditi, if I mischaracterize you, please let me know. But I agree. I think when you are the head coach and you are the CEO, you have to split your time. The whole team is under your
Absolutely,
purview.
Yes.
And when I see the entire game, the image of Kevin Stefanski is this. He is buried in the offensive play sheet. And I just feel like, does he even know what the hell's going on with the defense?
Here's the only thing, and this is going back 20 years.
And that's
Go ahead.
Well, and that's exactly my point, Jay. It's, when I'm on the sideline with a coach who's the head coach,
right,
and he's not a play caller. Sometimes he's on the bench talking to his defense. Sometimes he's over on the end talking to his kicker. Sometimes he's over talking to his offense. He's available to the entire team when necessary. When you go to a Ravens practice, sometimes you see John Harbaugh hanging out with the quarterbacks. Sometimes you see John Harbaugh hanging out with the linebackers. Sometimes you see John Harbaugh talking to that position coach, and sometimes he's talking to Justin Tucker. You want to feel
and
like
sometimes you see him whining like a baby about penalties.
Not a practice.
I love it. Go right ahead.
One thing I want to say this real quick, and this is going back 20 years, and it's not an apples to apples, but I covered Ohio State when Jim Tressel was there, and when the defense was on the field, Tressel was 45 yards away with his back turned to the field. Yeah. And nobody ever talks about that. They won a national championship. He could care less about what was going on defensively.
If Kevin Stefanski
he had Mark
was winning
D'Antonio.
Super Bowls, no one would complain about that here.
And that's why Jim Schwartz is here.
Right.
Yeah, but yes, there is a point to that. And you know what? Zach Taylor doesn't have to worry about his defense because Lou Anarumo completely, totally has it down. And it works. Fine. Great. I'm just saying that the entire operation, the entire team hasn't been winning to a level that you expect.
And that's why they'll all be blown out if it happens again next year. Yes. They'll all be blown out.
Rightfully so, I think.
Aditi, on an unrelated note, what's some of your takeaways from this weekend as a whole in the NFL playoffs?
That it's all wide open. I would have loved to have seen some. I would have liked to have seen some upsets. I would have. As you know, I was on the sideline.
Well, the Giants beat the Vikings. Bills. That was an upset.
That was it, though.
Yeah, that wasn't really an upset, though. Didn't you see that coming? I mean, I picked the Giants.
No, I picked the Vikings.
Both changed his pick.
Oh, that's right. That was the one he changed.
I mean, I think that
I picked the Giants, but I picked all the winners.
No, not all of them.
What
did you miss?
This is again all about the value of really, really good coaching. Look at what Mike McDaniel and Josh Boyer did with a third string quarterback. In Buffalo. One of the hardest places to play against a team just laden with talent, and it's good coaching, and it's being loose, and it's, again, the Dolphins sideline was so much looser than the Bills sideline was. They just weren't playing with the pressure of that expectation. I think that the Jaguars being able to climb out of that hole, that doesn't happen if they hadn't climbed out of 2-6. If Doug Peterson hadn't been preaching, build your section of the wall, keep at it that whole time all through the season, and the Ravens, whatever you think of John Harbaugh, Adam, I mean, what are they doing with Tyler Huntley to be in that game on the road that way?
That was a terrific coaching job.
But I will say, Harbaugh did an awful job because he wasted.
No, he didn't.
He wasted too much time.
No, he didn't.
But you know what?
No,
he
didn't.
explained that as saying he was really trying to make sure time expired, that they scored.
That's what I said in our group chat.
Yeah, but I think, like Adam, that was a mistake.
Again, I understand wanting time to expire. I get it. But he should have used at least one of those. You don't want to go from a minute to once you get down to 30 seconds. Does it matter if there's 8 seconds left on the clock?
Right. No, I mean, that's fair. That is very fair. And I saw even up in Buffalo, Sean McDermott and Mike McDaniel, both of them made some questionable things where it was like, or they're calling time at the worst possible time after a play had already been executed badly. I'm not phrasing this artfully, but I think you can always look at things like that. At the end of the day, getting that out of that offense where you just don't have any great pass catchers, where Tyler Huntley is coming off a massive injury. And I mean, I think the whole Lamar Jackson saga now is going to be very interesting.
What do you think is going to happen there, Aditi? Is he back in Baltimore?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
I don't
know.
I really wonder where his desire is. When you have a guy like Sammy Watkins, who is not a rabble-rouser, is not someone who speaks out of term, is not someone who is creating scandal. When you've got a guy like Sammy Watkins questioning if Lamar Jackson wants to play, I don't know. A year ago, it was clear that Lamar Jackson's heart wasn't in it, that he was worn down, whether it was by the repeated injuries or whatever it was. It just sort of feels a little bit like he's in that same place right now. And
I almost think, Aditi, that he's made the decision that it's not going to be Baltimore. And he didn't want to risk his health. And by the way, on that argument, I thought RG3 weighed in on this whole thing.
I saw that.
And as a guy who's gone through that and knows what the risk is for that same injury, I can tell you that RG3's point was the best one that I had seen. With his point that he's doing absolutely the right thing by not playing, he tweeted along with that a picture of him playing with the same injury that RG3 had, wearing a brace, and his knee looked like a twisted pretzel, and it ended his career.
Yeah, I got no problem with him not playing.
Well, a lot of people did. A lot of people were questioning his toughness.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I agree.
Well, his own teammates were.
Well, I know they were,
yeah.
And I think I think all those were cheap shots, and I think that all of that heaped onto where we already are. I think in his mind,
but he doesn't control the situation, though.
No, well, he does in that if he doesn't want to go back and play for Baltimore, he does. I mean, he can sit out.
Yeah,
he can hold out.
If he had a 5-year, $230 million contract, is he back on the field?
Probably.
Yes.
But see, this is, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is the other piece to that. This is why there should be guaranteed contracts, obviously. This is why players have to look out for themselves in every way. What I would say, if Lamar Jackson is actively looking to leave, the Ravens are, not that you owe the Ravens, but think about who is a good fit for you. And it's interesting because I had this conversation with the father of a player who will be up for a contract negotiation. I said, one of the biggest mistakes I see young players make is chase money and not chase fit. And you have to think about the fact that the Ravens, when half the league thought that Lamar Jackson was nothing but a wide receiver, the Ravens said, no, we believe he's a quarterback. They completely overhauled what they do on offense to suit him, to play in his style. If he is looking to go elsewhere, you better make sure that you have the same compliments around you, that you have someone that is willing to play to your strengths. And this all goes back to the same coaching that we were talking about earlier and the Browns. You go to a club that fits you. I'll give you an example. Le'Veon Bell, a few years ago, he was one of the top 2 running backs in the league, playing behind a line that was built for exactly his style, playing in an offense that absolutely suited him. He held out for more money. He went to the Jets, and what happened to him?
Yeah, it's pretty much
He didn't have the same line. He didn't have the same offense. He didn't have the same wide receivers drawing attention, and that was that. That was the end of his career. And you have to think that when you win, everybody eats. And look, if someone was holding an extra $1 million out to me, if someone was holding $1 million out to me, of course I'd jump. But in that world, $1 million, you can make that up in endorsements and speaking fees and all of that if you win a Super Bowl.
That's right.
So
Tom Brady did it for years in New England.
Yes, yeah. So of course Lamar Jackson has to look out for himself, and of course Lamar Jackson has to prevent catastrophic injury when he has no guarantees that he and his family will be taken care of. I just had this conversation with someone about Damar Hamlin, who I'm sure you heard last week his team patented 2 of his phrases. And there was immediately some scuttlebutt like, oh, look, he's trying to capitalize on all the interest people have in praying for him. And I say, how can you fault him for that? If this guy never steps on a football field again, he needs to be able to make sure that he's taking care of his family. So I understand what Lamar Jackson is doing right now. At the same time, I'd say, be careful. If you are looking to go elsewhere, make sure it's not only about the money. Yeah. Because if you go to the right place where you're going to get the most out of what you can do and where you can win, you're going to make that money back in spades.
Absolutely. And Aditi, you bring up a great point. I think if the owners looked at it objectively and just looked at it in a broader picture, when you guarantee someone's salary, you give them security. You help them make a decision. If I got a guaranteed contract and I know my players are against the playoffs, I know, hey, if anything goes out here, I can play free. Guess what? At the end of the day, I'm still going to get my money. Yeah. So players won't hold out. Players are going to play through smaller injuries, and they don't have to worry about the pushback. I think sometimes the owners feel like, well, I'm not going to guarantee that. But then you get to this position where you want a guy to play. I mean, you're in crunch time. This is a legacy, especially when some people don't ever get to playoffs. So you get there, you don't have your quarterback. It's just something that you can't play through. I just think that it's punitive not to look at.
But that's up to the players.
So
look at the situation. You still have Sammy Watkins saying, like, ripping Lamar. You're never going to get the guaranteed contracts.
It's not ripping. It's just it's questioning. You had J.K. Dobbins saying that if we had Lamar, we would have won that game. That they felt that they were playing defense and running the ball in a way that they could have made a run in the Super Bowl. You started this conversation by what are my takeaways? I think that it's wide open. I think whoever can get hot right now can run the table and win. Yeah. There's no one that I'm far and away saying is completely invulnerable, that this team is far and away the best team. So it is about getting in, and you can feel that way. But G, to your point, sometimes you have to spend money to make money.
That's right.
There it is.
And so, again, guarantee the contracts. Why do NBA players and baseball players get such guaranteed money? And yet the NFL, which is minting money, which is one of only two sports on the planet that is seeing viewership constantly rise. That's just, they just set attendance figures again this season. Come on, you can guarantee money for the players.
Aditi, can we get Andrew Whitworth to play left tackle for the Bengals this weekend? What do you think? We need him.
Yeah, I know. He was talking about going to Home Depot, wasn't he?
He needs to do it.
You see that? Someone was asking him, can you suit up? And he's like, I was real busy. I was at Home Depot, going to Bed Bath & Beyond, picking out some new tile for the bathroom.
That's from old school.
I don't think that...
Let me tell you something. What do you think of the league screwing the Bengals over by not having the Bengals-Bills game be at a neutral site?
Yeah, I don't understand that one. Like, it's if you were going to change it for the AFC title game, why would you not change it for the divisional round? It does feel a little bit funny to me. But look, the Bengals didn't have a problem last year. They went on the road to Tennessee, upset what was Tennessee, the number 1 seed or the number 2 seed? Number 1, upset Tennessee. Then they go to Kansas City and they, quote unquote, upset them. The Bengals have been down this road. It's not going to bother them. And look, the Miami Dolphins with a 3rd-string quarterback almost won that game in Buffalo.
Aditi, you live in the TV world. I hate the fact that we had a Monday night playoff game, and I think it's a massive advantage for San Francisco to now have 2 extra days off than Dallas does before the game. I think this is terrible. I don't think it should be a Monday night game when San Francisco played on Saturday. How big of a deal do you think that is?
I don't disagree with you. I don't. I mean, I think that this time of year you don't want to have such a competitive advantage or competitive disadvantage in that way. But how big of a deal is it? I don't know. It didn't look like the Cowboys had to try that hard last night.
Yeah, that was a walk-in for them.
Yeah. I think San Francisco started scheming for Dallas Saturday night, frankly.
You heard it here first. Dallas wins. Heard it here first.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, then I guess it wouldn't be that big of a deal if Dallas wins.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
But I think it's a massive advantage for the Niners.
Dallas is hard to figure out.
I love San Francisco's defense.
They're good.
I'm with you.
How about that when you're talking about the TV world? How about Brian Griese leaving the booth? Brian Griese unceremoniously being swapped out, finding out by reading a newspaper, not even getting a call.
I didn't see the story.
I didn't see it either.
I didn't see it. What happened?
No. This is last year when Brian Griese was taken out of the booth.
For Monday Night Football.
And so he decided to leave, and he goes to become a quarterbacks coach in San Francisco, and look at what he does. He gets the backup, Jimmy Garoppolo, playing better than the starter, Trey Lance, and then he gets the 3rd stringer, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, playing better than the 2nd stringer. So maybe TV isn't all that. Or maybe there are smart people in TV, whichever way you want to say it.
I think both
Aditi,
true.
Aditi's the quarterback's coach in Cleveland next year.
Brian Griese, I think he's a great guy and good for him.
If you had to bet who's starting at quarterback for the Niners week 1 next year without knowing what happens in the rest of the playoffs, you had to bet today who's their starting quarterback week 1.
Tom Brady.
Let's say Brock. Not Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's in the mix.
I like the story of Brock Purdy. I just think he's been playing really, really well and is only going to get better.
Crazy.
It is a crazy story. I'm still not buying, but it's still. He's played
to the coaching
he hasn't played any very good defenses as more and more teams get tape on him. It's a good story now, but I'm not buying it.
Let's see how he handles the Micah Parsons
We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's all fair. And you know what? I'll tell you what can make a quarterback look really good when you have a great defense.
That's true.
I mean, that's the truth. San Francisco is playing such good defense that it makes everybody else look better.
Real quick, 15 seconds. What's Tom Brady doing next year? Is he playing, and where if he plays?
I think he's got to call it.
You think?
I really do.
I don't think he goes out like that. I think he comes back, but I won't be in Tampa.
It won't be in Tampa, that's for sure. But
Jets.
I don't know.
Jets.
You know, you admire his passion, but it's also it makes you wonder a little bit, right? Like in some ways, it's just. You don't want to hang on too long. It takes me back to Marquise Pouncey telling me when he retired, and I felt that he had retired prematurely. And he said, you know what? I don't want to be just a guy.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm used to being one of the best at what I do. Yeah. And could I get another 5 years out of this? Yes, I could get another 5 years, but I won't be one of the best. And I don't want to do it if I'm just going to be ordinary.
That's smart.
And I think that the Tom Brady that we saw yesterday looked very, very ordinary. And
66 passing attempts.
It was crazy. They don't run the
ball. Dallas knew they didn't have to defend the run, so Tampa made it very easy on him, just like Tampa made it very easy on Cleveland. Yeah. Cleveland's weakness was the run, and they didn't do it, and they lost.
Thanks, Aditi.
Yeah, Aditi, you're great, man.
Thanks, guys.
You.
Have a great week.
That's what.